So I introduced myself. Here's my headshot in case you want to see. Hey, go on. Okay. So our discussion today is on navigating the transition from grad student to early career researcher, going from dissertations to fellowships, postdocs, and beyond. So our speakers today, and I've checked with them about pronouncing names correctly, and I apologize again if I mess anything up. So we have Dr. Emily Q. Rosenzweig, Dr. Haewon Lee, recently made Dr. Jeff Vomund, and then Dr. Zhujung Lee. So a little bit of some bio, first of all, before we get into some questions. So Dr. Rosenzweig is an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Psychology in the University of Georgia's Mary Frances Early College of Education. Her research focuses on understanding and improving students' motivation to learn and how students value learning. She focuses in particular on challenging developmental transition points for students, for example, the last year of high school, and on studying the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Her work has been featured in scholarly outlets, including Science Advances, Journal of Educational Psychology, and Learning and Instruction. She received a bachelor's degree, summa cum laude, from Washington University in St. Louis in 2011, and a PhD in Human Development from the University of Maryland in 2017. Outside of her work, she can be found playing elaborate pretend games masterminded by her 3-year-old daughter, which usually rope in her 1-year-old and dog as well. And then we have Dr. Haewon Lee, and she is a postdoctoral scholar at UC Irvine. She's working with Dr. Sandra Simpkins and Dr. Jacqueline Eccles on an NSF-funded project about adolescent STEM motivation, intersectionality, and families. She received her PhD in educational psychology at The Ohio State University. Haewon's research focuses on unique motivational experiences in underserved and underrepresented student populations in STEM. Specifically, she explores roles of social agents, such as parents, teachers, and peers in motivation, engagement, and success, and comparison processes underlying the development of academic self-concept and identity. And then we have Dr. Jeff Vomund, is the Director of Division of Applied Research and Evaluation for the Social Work Office of Research and Public Service. It's a very long title, at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. He will receive his PhD in educational psychology from George Mason's College of Education and Human Development in May 2024. Jeff's primary research has pertained to the motivational implications of teacher empathy in classrooms. However, he has also written on the importance of understanding student perceptions for teachers and teacher educators. His current research interests, in addition to empathy, include the quality of child-teacher interactions and workforce development in early childhood care. And finally, we have Dr. Zhujung Lee, who is a professor of educational psychology in the Department of Educational Studies and a faculty associate of the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research and Policy. Her current research interests include understanding the social process of learning in classrooms for diverse groups of students, dialogic approaches to fostering deep learning and social relationships, and the teaching and learning of argumentative writing. She serves on the editorial boards of the Journal of Educational Psychology, Contemporary Educational Psychology, and the Journal of Experimental Education. Her work has been supported by the Institute of Education Sciences, the Spencer Foundation, and other foundation grants or district contributors. All right, so moving into the main part of our discussion, and I have some links. I apologize. I have some links for some of their work, so I'll be putting those into the chat as well. But our discussion today will follow 3 sections. So first, we'll have a discussion with our panelists, and then the second part, we'll have a chance to answer your questions. And then, oh, I apologize. We just have 2 parts. So moving in, I think I will stop sharing my screen at this point so we can see all of our speakers. All right, so our first question for our panelists is, how and when did you determine the type of position you wanted to pursue following your doctoral work? A couple of side questions under here. Please describe some of the types of work you do on a regular basis when your current position. And another one is if you held any positions between graduating and the position you're currently in. And I see Elise put that into the chat, which is helpful. Thank you.
I can start. Gotta break the ice. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I used to plan these events when I was a grad student, so I'm honored to be invited back. So currently I'm faculty at the University of Georgia. I, before that, was a postdoctoral research fellow funded on an NSF postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Wisconsin. And so those are kind of the paths I've taken since I was a student. Um, how I determined the type of position I wanted to pursue. I was in my last year of graduate school. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to try and go for a faculty job, but I actually made the decision in my last year to decide not to apply for faculty jobs while I was a student. And I applied only to postdocs for a few reasons. I have a partner and now two kids, but I didn't have the kids till I was at this faculty job. And my partner was applying to business school. So we had like a 2-year period where it would actually be better if I did a postdoc, and then we could go on the job market at the same time and negotiate where to go. We thought that would be easier. I didn't have like an outrageous publication record. I mean, it really differs by person, but I didn't feel like, oh, I'm going to be so competitive for the research focused faculty jobs, which was what I was interested in. And so I decided and saw some of my peers putting in a ton of time on the market. I had seen other people just do postdocs and thought that seems more like the fit for me because I was able to do it at the time. But I did have to only negotiate. I wanted to do a postdoc remote or be able to travel somewhat because my partner was going to be in school. We didn't know where. So there was a little bit of kind of questions about it. And so when I determined what I wanted to do was right before my last year of my doctoral studies. And I decided to apply for that NSF fellowship, which I did in the year kind of like up through the summer and fall of my 5th year of my studies. And then I applied for a few other postdoctoral fellowships while I was waiting to hear back from that. And then eventually heard back and went there. So it wasn't that exciting. I only really went for one thing. And then I waited 2 years and went on the job market just one time and was really fortunate that this job at Georgia was posted. That was very aligned with my interests. And that's sort of how I ended up where I am.
I can kind of jump in on that because I too, my job searching was very geographically just informed. Maybe is the right way to say. So I was in my second last year at George Mason, and I knew I wanted to get closer to Knoxville, which is where my husband lives, and I wanted to kind of get around there and see if we could get closer. And but I was also looking for a faculty job. At least I thought I was looking for a faculty job. And kind of positioning myself for that. But then this research center, which is entirely grant funded, so it's all soft funding, needed some positions for a several-year grant to do research, and which is at UT. So it actually got me to Knoxville, which I was thought, well, what are the odds of that? So I ended up taking this as a way to keep doing research. Now, research my PhD research is primarily in classrooms and motivation, but this research is a lot of early childhood. So it's been a bit of a change in field in some sense, but the methodology, I do a lot of the methodological work, and that translates pretty well. So, and then, so that's what I was doing. I was doing early childhood research, and kind of we were charged to work with other early childhood providers and nonprofits and discern together a unified research agenda for the state of Tennessee. So I do spend a lot of time on that in early childhood. And then also I run some focus groups for providers and soon to be parents of early childhood folks. So those are my main two things.
I can be the next. I'm working at the Ohio State University, starting from the assistant professor position and then promoted to associate. And last year I was promoted to full. So I've been in this position for my whole career after graduating from University of Illinois. So between my doctoral years and my current job, I didn't have other positions in between. But what made me decide to be a faculty member? I always wanted to do research. Research is my passion. I enjoy exploring the uncertainties, designing, inventing new instructional approaches for our young generations. So in my early years in the doctoral program, I knew being a faculty would be my dream job. But closer to my graduation year, as I was doing my dissertation, I did wonder at one point whether I should just be I should be a research scientist in maybe like Institute of Education Sciences or other research-oriented institutions, but not colleges. And the reason is that I have both theoretical foundations and some methodological strengths. I like large-scale data sets. I love statistics. I like to do data analysis. And I know with this skill set, I have other revenue that I can, avenue that I can pursue. So when I was on the job market, it was mostly based on timing because faculty positions were available earlier in the year compared to postdocs or some private institutions. And so I was on the job market, and I was very fortunate to have this one and only opportunity to be interviewed and got invited for a campus visit, and that determined my my faculty my career. But if I didn't get this job, I would my second choice would be to wait for postdoc positions, and that was typically more available around March, April, when I was on the job market. I know nowadays postdoc positions are more available throughout the year, and also research scientists.
I can go the next. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored, and Dr. Lin was my dissertation committee member, so I'm so happy and honored to be with her as a panelist. Yeah, I'm working as a postdoc at UC Irvine and got my degree at the Ohio State University. And this is my second year in postdoc, and I did my first postdoc at Texas A&M University, and I started this position 6 months ago. To me, to pursue postdoc position or research-focused career after doctoral position was pretty obvious because I was an elementary school teacher before I started PhD. So when I started my PhD program, I knew I liked research. That's the reason why I started this career. But I was and still am a single mom. So I had a lot of challenges and struggles during my PhD program. So by the time that I graduate my degree, I was not happy with my research skills. And I knew I am not competitive enough to get a research-focused faculty position at the time. So I just strategically focused on postdoctoral positions. So I didn't apply to faculty position in fall. Like Dr. Lim mentioned, most of post faculty positions come up in the fall semester. But at that time, during that time, I was writing my dissertation, and I just started to apply to postdoc position from spring semester.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of your stories about how you entered into this work after graduation. So our second question, and I think Elise is going to drop that into the chat, is what are some ways graduate students can prepare for the transition from dissertation work to early career positions?
I'll jump in first this time just to share the effort of breaking the ice. Not that I have any great insight into this, but I think a couple of things come to mind anyway when I saw that question. One is I think you just want to be intentional about what you want to do. I mean, if you like methods, then take methods courses. If you really like motivation, then be in motivation courses, and then network as much as you can. I think like so much of what I've learned and done has been because I was meeting the people who were doing things in my field, or they were, trying to meet people who were doing work similar to mine. So I think network, but not just like network just to go out and meet people, but like who do you want to meet, who do you want to talk to, and what can you learn from them? So I think that intentionality is really key, because really all of PhD is really just preparing for what you want to do after PhD. So if what you want to do is do large data set quantitative work after your PhD, then you should be trying to do as much of that as possible now and collaborating with folks who do that, I think. So I think I'd say one, so intentionality. And two, I think I feel like one thing, I had a phenomenal advisor. She was so generous to me and good, but we worked in kind of a silo. It was just she and I doing our work in sort of her, within her purview, and it was great. However, I feel like the movement of the field is all around larger and more strategic collaborations. So I think the more projects you can get involved with, the better. Can you be third or fourth author on something for somebody? Fantastic. Can you be a little part of somebody else's project? I think the more that you can do, the more you'll learn, the more perspectives you'll get. So I think if you can be involved in lots of projects, even if not all of them as first or second author, and just to learn some, I think that's really going to be valuable. So lots of projects if you can, lots of different collaborations, and then really intentional about what you're doing and helping it lead you to what you want to do when you're done. So those are my two thoughts on that.
And I just want to echo what Jeff just said. Collaboration is very important. Being a faculty doesn't mean you have to do everything on your own. In fact, we collaborate all the time, even with teaching. And knowing how to collaborate with different types of people, from full professor, associate professor, assistant professor to graduate students or postdoc, will give you a lot of advantages when you one day want to form a team to pursue a grant or pursue a larger scale study. Another skill set that I would highly encourage graduate students to prepare before transitioning to your next job is grant writing skill. But this is under the condition that your study cannot function as well without funding. In my research, as an example, most of my study, 99%, are conducted in schools. School-based research requires funding. We need to hire people to collect data in the field. We need to fund graduate students to analyze data. we need to provide funding to school districts so that they will be willing to sustain our relationships. And when I first became an assistant professor, I realized that I didn't have a solid grant writing skill. When I was a doctoral student, I was spoiled by the abundant fundings that my former advisor had. And all I had to take care about was executing the plan, making sure I fulfill my responsibilities. I never had this mindset that one day I will write my own grant as a principal investigator. I will be leading a group of grad students or a group of colleagues. I didn't prepare myself for this cruel grant writing and selection process, knowing that only 15% or less of grants would be accepted. I had to learn to receive to deal with all the failure before I finally become successful. And in retrospect, I would have trained myself in this journey of grant writing by pursuing dissertation fellowships, pursuing scholarships, even if it's just a small amount. That writing process will prepare me with a very different mindset. So what would this organization that has money would like my idea? This mindset is very different from trying to publish your paper in a journal. And yeah, I think that this writing takes time, perspective taking from a researcher to a grant officer. It also takes time. If students can enjoy this process while you are still under the shadow of your advisors, you will have lots of advantages when you become independent in an institution one day.
I totally agree. I think that's a skill set we don't often learn, except if we need funding as students. And so those fellowships and small grants, they seem, oh, that's so different from a big application, but it's just a different mindset and perspective. And I think that's a great point. I totally agree with what's already been said, especially collaborations. I'll add two things. One is collaborations. Yes, that was also my advice. But also, I think not necessarily just because of the extrinsic value from it, but one of the most freeing and satisfying things about my transition to being an early career researcher was that you're suddenly in more of a place where it's expected that you and your colleagues who are at your same level will collaborate with one another without like a supervising person on the project. And that first time you really get to be the supervising person on your own project with a handful of colleagues to bounce ideas off one another, it's very exciting. I mean, it's scary, but it's also really satisfying. You feel like you've made the leap. I don't have to run it by somebody, and that's really fun. So I think the more you can build the collaboration network, the more people you can work with, it really helps you because it's the foundation of what you'll do next. But it's also really, really pleasing. And then the last thing is sort of the opposite, which is to build mentorship skills. I think the more you can as a student get an opportunity to supervise. I mean, I like the phrasing of you can do it under your current advisor to make sure if things go awry or there are conflicts, somebody else can help you navigate that during the first time you do it. And I think building those skills is really, if you're going into at least a faculty position or a postdoc position, you're now really in a leadership role on projects. And the more you can develop that skill early, the better.
Yeah, I think grant writing skills are still applied to me. That's the part that I need to develop because I'm also sort of spoiled by my supervisor's support. Yeah, I think different mindsets is needed because, as Emily said, mentorship is more required even for postdoc. So as a grad student, we can just focus on our work and our coursework or other sort of more like the personal things, but postdoc positions are more expected to mentor undergrads or grad students. So sort of that different mindset that like as a more advanced, like the researcher at a more advanced pathway, and what I can do to support the people sort of following after me is sort of the mindset that is expected to have.
Thanks again for sharing your insight for that question. We're going to take a quick pause before the next question, and Joey is going to drop in the work that you all had shared with me, just in case anybody needs to leave early. So there are several articles that are available, and so he'll be, dropping those in. So feel free to take a look at those. And our second question, I think there are 4. Are there just 4? Oh, okay. Thank you, Elise. She's putting the names with each of those. So our next question that we'll also drop into the chat is, what are some key differences between the expectations and responsibilities of a graduate student versus those that you experience in your position?
I can go first. So the mindsets, as I mentioned, that's the part that specifically my previous mentor, supervisor, highly emphasized and expect me to support undergrads and grad students in the same lab. And definitely independent research skills is highly expected compared to my years in graduate students. So all the work that I'm doing right now is bring up the study models and run the data sets and test it and writing manuscripts. It's highly focused on research compared to what I've done in my graduate program. So that may be related to the second question for the sort of the strategies or skills that people need to prepare for the transition. So more proactively need to develop, carry out their independent research. It might be sort of the one that is a key different from when I was in graduate program.
When I think about what the difference, just to, I guess, pop in, I think this question kind of vexed me a little bit when we prepared for it. So I think leading your own projects is super, just trusting your voice. I mean, you've just got to you got to learn to trust your voice. And that doesn't mean doesn't mean I get everything right or my voice is always correct now. Far from that. But it does mean that I've got to use it and then, learn and keep learning, but I'm expected to put my sort of stuff out there. The other thing I think of is, and again, I'm in a soft-funded, grant-based research center. So for us, it's a much more aggressive timeline. We'll get a grant, maybe $500,000 for 2 years of work, and we've got to hire folks and get the research done, respond to the client's needs, and then get the research out. And it's a very tight timeline, and it's aggressive is the word I come for. It's an aggressive, how much can you get for for $500,000 or whatever the grant is worth in this case, and then how do you roll your existing staff into it and still get the stuff you need. So I think that I feel like in academia, there's almost always room for an extension. You know, like, well, like just a couple, you know, you write a real nice email and you get a couple more days, and that's just not always the case. Especially with grants, especially in our grant work. It's just so I think sometimes that people who come to this setting and suffer or struggle have been the ones who have that sense of, well, it's not really great, but I'll send it in, and that's not really how it works in this setting, at least. So it's certainly been much more like aggressive timelines, and grants, have very, very strict timelines, and you don't really get to submit your second best draft. That's not how, you get to, how do you do your own timeline? So you've got your first draft done and you get your feedback, and your second draft and you get feedback. So I just think that really, like, am I self-motivated enough, or am I self-regulated enough? I'm sorry, that's the phrase I wanted. Self-regulated enough to kind of plan and make sure that I really submit my best work in the next, in 2 weeks from now or a month from now or whatever I need. So I think that's really been a difference for me and for some of my younger colleagues here. I'd say it's been important and hard.
I think there are two main differences for me. I've had two position transitions, and each one came with a different big transition that's worth noting. And one is the independence, and I think this has already been touched on. And switching to my postdoc, I was doing full-time research as a student, and I was doing full-time research as a postdoc. I was really fortunate to have those opportunities. So my research, I was still balancing projects, but yeah, you're basically in charge all of a sudden of kind of creating a whole manuscript and submitting it, instead of sending just a part and getting feedback, or kind of running it through a few channels. I think that was big. And you want to do a project, like my postdoc mentor, who's amazing, had all this data, and she was just like, whatever you want, use the data. And it was like, how? Why? What do I do? There were hundreds of files, and she basically just gave me the autonomy to kind of organize them how I wanted, create a system, file the system, write paper from the system. So that was awesome, but it was so different than as a student, where I had autonomy, but at the end of the day, I still sought out the kind of feedback and structure from my mentor as I went through. And then the transition from postdoc to faculty, I felt like I got used to the independence part, but all of a sudden, I had never had the balance of all the things that need to be happening all the time. And starting in my second year, my postdoc, when I taught for the first time, into my faculty job, I think I used to think of mentors as, well, what are they doing? There's so much time to read my paper. And it's like, oh my God, you have no time. You have teaching students, reading everybody's work, service responsibilities, journal, editorial reviews. You start getting the review requests. So learning how to balance all of that, but in a way that was more sustainable for my future, not necessarily like, well, this is just a 1-year thing, I'm in the crunch before I graduate. That was a skill set. I think those were kind of the big changes. And so first the independent responsibility, and then many independent responsibilities, and juggling them. And I think I'm glad I had some scaffolding for that, but those were they're challenging. They're skills you need to learn.
There are so many differences in the expectations and requirements between graduate students and a faculty member. I don't even know where to begin, but I'll start with some simpler ones. As a graduate student, the responsibility and expectation is to learn, and to learn it well. As a faculty member, people will not ask you, what are you going to learn? People are going to come and ask you, what can you offer? So you will not oftentimes be asked to teach a job and then a syllabus given to you and have you familiarize the course content. Instead, people will ask you, what course can you offer based on your expertise? And you may have to create a brand new course, or you may have to reinvent an existing course based on your current knowledge set. And another major difference is when graduate students do research and make errors, your faculty members are always behind you to shadow you or to tell you it's okay. we can do it again. As a faculty member, I'm not saying faculty members cannot make errors, but there's a consequence to the errors. Sometimes we take responsibilities. And that's why when you file an IRB protocol, students cannot be listed as the PI. Faculty members are listed as the PI of an IRB protocol because faculty members need to take responsibilities. And sometimes those responsibilities are heavy. So there are these different expectations. However, that doesn't mean being a faculty is a painful and struggling process. Faculties can be supported by multiple systems. If, again, going back to our previous comments, if you are able to build a strong and positive social networks, you have colleagues who can collaborate with you, you have sweet graduate students who can always by your side when you're learning something new together. Yeah, I think these are the main differences. Another difference, if we go back to the grant writing part, faculty members are often struggling with financial support for their graduate students. We have to seek fundings to help our students succeed in their career with doctoral study. As a graduate student, you're seeking fundings from your faculty members who may have or not have resources for you. So again, I think faculty would have that huge responsibility because they have to take care of more people within their lab or within their department. I hope this makes sense.
I think you've touched on some related to this next question, but in case this question prompts anything else, the next one is asking, could you share any personal experiences or challenges you faced during your transition from graduate student to postgraduate work and how you overcame them?
I'd be happy to start. I don't necessarily think I'd call them like negative challenges, but a lot of personal transitions happen during the time in your life when you're finishing grad school, moving through a postdoc if you do one, moving into your first position. If it's faculty, non-faculty, it doesn't matter. When I looked on the job market, I had a 2-person needing to move to different locations. I ultimately did a postdoc remotely, which was challenging. This was pre-Zoom, pre-COVID years. So, it wasn't really a thing. And I really wasn't, I would just sort of not talk to anybody for a while until I'd come and visit and we'd talk about projects. And that was nice. And that, I signed up for this and that was the norm we had set and I got a lot of work done, but it's very isolating. A postdoc in general can be. And then moving into faculty, and then we had to negotiate 2 people on the job market, which was challenging too. And then as a faculty, I've had 2 kids while on the tenure track. So just a lot of personal things happen. I think often we only focus on the balance that you need as a faculty, but not a faculty, just a early career researcher of any sort. But the biggest thing that I've negotiated throughout all the years since I've graduated, which I did not have to really do as a student, is balancing my own work goals and my own professional aspirations and my own research program alongside the aspirations and the goals and my personal goals and everything with respect to my family and the community I want to be in and kids and everything like that. And I think it's always a negotiation. So I don't necessarily have a overcame, it's just a lot of communication, a lot of planning. And I think it's okay that that's part of our lives too. I think it's a really important part of our lives that most people have to deal with in some capacity.
I can go next. So as I said, I started my PhD when my boy was 18 months old. And I was a single mom. So definitely I had a lot of struggles during my PhD program, but specifically during transition. This is sort of related to my criteria on a new location for postdoc work for a new position. So I highly value for the location with a good size of Korean community, because that's a strong support system that I can utilize. So that's why I went to College Station, where Texas A&M is located, and now Irvine is one of the biggest cities that have large Korean community. So struggles and challenges always exist, but I try to make the best use out of Korean community to provide secure support for my child. So supporting my child to adjust to a new environment always goes first to be successful for myself. And then after setting up the sort of childcare system, then it sort of go against what Emily mentioned. I don't mind just working late night and working even over the weekend to make up for the work fell behind because of that adjustment. That's my life, and I don't regret such work life. Not pursuing work-life balance. That's what I have to do right now. Yeah. That's it.
I can go next. When I first came to OSU, my biggest challenges were how to initiate my own research that is independent of my former advisor's work. And how can I establish something new in the meantime managing first author publications? And as first author publications are the expectations for tenure track faculty members. And it was not easy. And I still remember that when I first submitted a grant to initiate something new, I naively thought I could, by a new project, I need to do something that's brand new. But I proposed something that's far away from what I have done. And that's not the expectation in this grant writing world. When you propose something new, people are still expecting that your work somehow, to some extent, is built upon your prior work, because your prior work stands for your expertise, and your expertise is something that can persuade grant agencies that, yes, you can get it done. And I didn't have that mindset. It made a huge error of proposing something that's completely not feasible for me to do independently. And how did I overcome these challenges? I think my colleagues played an important role. I had a very positive and supportive department chair. Eric Enderman was the chair at the time. And I also had a mentor, Lily Enderman. Both of them had offered lots of mentoring support. I think in many institutions, departments try to establish a formal or informal mentoring systems for early career researchers, especially tenure track assistant professors, because they know there's a lot of things going on for assistant professors, lots of expectations and lots of stress. And the one thing that I really benefit and appreciate from my mentors was that it helps me understand the rules and expectations within the department. Every department or college or institution has its own tenure promotion policy. In general, they share some commonalities across institutions, but there are some variations. And within Ohio State University, I got to learn what the expectations are, and I was able to work toward those expectations. And my colleagues who are familiar with those rules can help me make sure that I was on the right track, and I was protected. For example, at OSU, first year assistant professors are given a status called M status. M status means you can advise master students, but you are not allowed to advise doctoral students. And this was done intentionally because faculty members knew how much work and effort it takes to mentor a doctoral students. And they want first year faculty members to have sufficient amount of time to focus on their own work before they can offer more of a mentoring to first year doctoral students. And my mentor was able to make sure that I was protected in that route. And likewise, service responsibilities for tenure track assistant professors, at least at OSU, can be is expected to be lower than associate or full professors, because this is a critical time for early career researchers to establish their reputations, to build new courses, to establish a new lab. And so the service responsibility, even though it's 40%, 20%, 20% divide, but in the type of service that we were asked to do was much lighter than those that were given to associate or full professors. And over time, my service load would become more substantial. But this is built upon a healthy scaffolding process.
So I'll jump in real quick, and I've got to leave around 8. I got one more meeting yet tonight, so I got to do that. But I'll put my email in before I go, just in case anybody has any questions. So a couple of quick things. One, I've just been at this, post, or I just got my doctorate like Friday, and I've been in this job since since August. So I'm super new. So I just want to say that to my other colleagues who've commented. I just learned a bunch from you. So thanks. It's so interesting. So thanks for that. And then so two, I'd say I think that they've given a bunch of really good advice, it seems like to me, around academia and tenure track. I would just encourage, I feel like lots of the things I do and I kind of miss and lack and are really neat. I think, I wish I was teaching more. But I also love applied research. It's been its own set of gifts. I work with policymakers. I work, with the Department of Human Services, the Department of Children's Services, to actually do research that they're paying for. So I know I'm more likely to use it. So it's a mix. I just think it's worth opening up to questions about what do you want? How much research? How much applied? I just think those are great open questions. So keep asking them. It's not just one kind of your PhD, I think, allows you to be creative with what you want to do. And I think sometimes the system can focus on one thing, but there's lots of ways to be generative and to use your knowledge for the good of the world. And then finally, I'd say I think the two things that, to answer the question, are that I just think there's more juggling after your PhD. I mean, there's juggling as a PhD student too, or a PhD candidate, but there's more juggling. And it feels like higher stakes, I think, afterwards, because you're juggling more responsibilities there. And the other thing that it's an important transition, and Emily, I think you touched on this. I feel like in school, you tell yourself, okay, I got to really push hard for 2 more years. I got to really push hard for this last year, but like now it's like the rest of your life. And so you maybe you want to push hard for the rest of your life too, or for the next 5 years, or until you get tenure, or I don't know. But at some point, I do think in the midst of working very hard, you also want to think, well, what kind of life am I going to craft? You know, I certainly want to work hard, you want to contribute, but I want a life that I want to craft. That's the whole life. It's not just my scholarship. It's not just my research. So where's that whole life with my family and friends and whatever? So I just think that's a skill that you get in school. You can say, oh, I just got to do this for 2 more years or 3 more years or whatever. But that sort of veneer is off. And now you think, oh, this is the life I've chosen. Okay, now I've got to build it a little bit. And that just requires maybe some extra boundaries and thought around how much to give and the kind of life you want to construct for your professional self, but also for your heart. And I wouldn't forget that as well. I'm gonna put my chat in, my 8 o'clock meeting. I hope to see you all at AERA, and thanks as always to Motivation Sig for doing a phenomenal job of bringing people together to think and talk about ways we can do our work. So thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It was good to see you, and
you.
congratulations again. Thanks for all
Thank
your
you very
insight.
much. Yeah. See you in April.
And I want to say also thank you so much for sharing about those personal experiences and how you're kind of navigating all of that. I think it really brings the human part to this work that we're doing too, and recognizing that we're whole people. So a couple of you kind of talked about networks and communities and supports. And so I think we'll go to that question next about how important is networking in the transition from graduate students to postdoctoral positions, and what strategies do you recommend for effective networking?
Okay, I'll go first because they mentioned transition from graduate studies to postdoctoral position. So I thought I had to mention something. I don't know. I thought about networking a lot when I was on job market, and although I need to be on job market soon though. But for postdoc positions specifically, these positions are expected, people in these positions are hired to carry out specific positions, specific projects, or use specific data sets. So I personally think fit is more important than network to get a postdoc position. But it depends. It may be different case by case, but usually to me, my current supervisor, Sandy, told me my experience of using secondary data sets, specifically HSLS, high school longitudinal study. She valued that experience highly. So that's the main reason she hired me. And my experiences from like 2 postdoc positions, usually people highly think about how this person fit to this position to carry out this specific projects. But I don't know about network at faculty position to build up their own career. That'll be another story.
We can go in career order if we want. So I found networking to be really useful for my postdoc position. I wrote an NSF grant for my postdoc, but I wrote it to work with Judy Herikevich, and I actually met her because we happened to be in line next to each other to register for AERA like 10 years ago. And I turned around and it was Judy, and I really liked her work. My dissertation was based in it. And I said, I like introduced myself, and we were in like a 20-minute line. And by the end, we had kind of made a connection. And then I saw her at a dinner, a couple days later, we talked more. And when I needed to identify mentors for my fellowship, I thought about our nice conversation. She gave me really good advice on my dissertation, really kind of like precise and helpful advice on the design of my study. And I thought, that was a good connection. I emailed her, sort of cold emailed, like, would you be open to writing this grant? Because we had at that point met, 2 times. And she said, sure. And I don't know that she would have said yes if we had never met. So in that way, it's not like I was approaching it like I need to meet her, but it was very helpful to have made that connection in passing. And I think a lot of my collaborations that I developed in my career are from those kinds of connections. So not necessarily coming into a conference like I need to meet X, Y, and Z, but when I'm there, go to the social and talk to new people and, just meet people, but not necessarily people at a higher level than me who could mentor me or give me a job. Also, people at my same career stage, students and other early career professionals. Those are the individuals with whom you'll eventually need to make teams for grant writing. I think this was already said. And, develop connections and share resources and send students each other's way. So, I think it's very valuable, but I don't necessarily think it needs to be as like calculated as people often think. I mean, there are lots of very organized ways to kind of network more intentionally, and those are great too. But I think a lot of the natural connections you make just by being at a conference, talking to your peers, meeting their people that they know, though that networking really makes a big difference as well.
I think Emily and Heywan have covered many useful tips. I really don't have much to add. For me, I make use of every conference presentations. I make sure that I try my best to do the best presentation, leaving positive impression on people, because you never know when this person will play an important role in your life. And when I serve on service duties, at the college level or at the international level, I also do my job, making sure that I fulfill my responsibilities, and people will get to know me through my work, through my journal review comments, or through my oral or verbal a comment at the panel review meeting, or through this type of occasion. I think every opportunity when I can meet people, it's a networking opportunity, and just do my best to leave a positive impression on others, and open to more communications afterwards.
Great, thank you so much. This next question is pretty concrete, and I don't know, if there's kind of a limit to, oh, I'm sorry, never mind. So for those considering alternative career paths outside of academia, what steps can they take during their graduate studies to explore and prepare for these options? What resources, if any, are you aware of in this regard?
I can start, but I'll start by acknowledging, as faculty, when I was in grad school, we weren't trained to pursue careers outside of academia. I mean, a lot of people did, but I didn't get any training in how to seek out resources. And as I'm a faculty member now, I think kind of to some of the points earlier, I'm realizing that there are equal opportunities within and outside of academia to fulfill the things that I really enjoy. I mean, I love being a faculty member, but I don't think that's my one right path. And I almost wish I would have considered more broadly different opportunities, not because I want to not be at this position, because I'd have still ended up here, but just to feel more freedom and understand all the ways that our careers and degrees are useful. And I think, kind of to Jeff's point, I think people are just really focused on that faculty path, and that's a great path, but it's not the only one. I think the advice that I give my students, because I have limited training myself and many faculty members do, is in that case to really build your network, to have brief conversations with people who have transitioned out, get specific advice from them. Lots of companies post internships or opportunities like that. And if you really think as a student that you want to pursue a non-academic or not traditional academic path, those are great opportunities to see if you like it and see what that job is like, but also get your foot in the door, get some experience that's relevant. There are tons of resources for professional material creation and these kinds of things online, but I think the best way is to talk to other people who have done this similar transition and really get advice, and similar to these kinds of panels where you're getting a lot of advice from faculty, but get that from people who are not faculty, because I'm faculty because I didn't get much information about alternatives, you know?
Yeah, I think looking for internship opportunities offered by the industry is a good idea. This gives you an opportunity to have firsthand experience in those environments. And before you make a final decision on, okay, do I really like to go in this route, or do I want to go consider other alternatives? And I have a doctoral student who had done an internship for West Ed for 2 consecutive years, and that really helped her understand what a research scientist would look like when they were working for West Ed or other similar institutions. And I also agree with Emily that talk to people who have been successful in securing non-academic jobs, learn about their experience, and most importantly, learn about potential possible timelines when those positions can be available, and then mark them on your calendar so that you don't lose it. Because I think based on my anecdotal experience of what I heard, these timelines tend to be much shorter compared to faculty position opportunities. They post something and they want people immediately. And so these deadlines tend to be easily missed.
I think I shouldn't say anything because I didn't consider about career path outside academia yet.
All right, moving on to the next question. What are some common misconceptions about transitioning from graduate student to early career positions, and how can they be addressed?
I wouldn't say this is misconceptions, but just to share my personal experiences, I think my experiences would be very different from those who are expected to have in grad studies. So because of my personal circumstances, I had to pick and choose. So usually people apply to very, very many positions, like definitely more than 10 or 20 for postdocs or faculty positions, or regardless of the types of work, or even teaching positions. But to me, I highly focused on research-focused postdoc positions when I was on job market, because I didn't want to spend my time applying to many different positions, and I didn't have time to editing my materials to fit to all different positions. So I was very selective when I was on job market, targeting postdoc positions. So some people may just, if anyone believe they sort of are pressure to apply to every positions that comes up to me, that I would say that's not the case all the way, always. It depends on your situations. I would say choose the best way that you can make, that can use your time effectively and be productive.
You want to go ahead?
No.
One thing I want to point out is for grad students who are about to be on the job market, they often have, including myself, we often have this impression that, oh, I have to have many publications, the more publications I have, the better I can secure a job. But based on my experience in reviewing many job applications at OSU, I came to a conclusion that sometimes it's really a matter of fit. You may have 10 publications, but people may want to select the other person who has only 5 publications, but it's a great fit. Or maybe I only have one major publication by the time I'm on the job market, whereas my opponents have maybe 5 or 10, but that one single publication really stands out to be something that the department, the institution wants, and then that would give me better opportunity to secure the job compared to others. So I think it's really a matter of fit. And so to echo what Haewon just said, trying to apply every possible position on the job market may not be the best job search technique. You have to read closely. Even sometimes you have to read between the lines what the job posts are about and reflect on whether those are reflective of your identity or your experience and knowledge before you apply.
Okay, now I'm glad I went third because that's a great point. I mean, I've reviewed applicants for 2 different postdoc positions in the past 2 years. And with both of them, we looked for, do they have some evidence that they worked on research? So usually that was like at least 1 paper published, ideally first author, didn't have to be. If not, we talked about it as a hiring committee. And did they show interest with what we were doing, and did they have the skills to actually do the task we needed for the postdoc? And really didn't, somebody could have 20 papers, and if they weren't related in terms of their skills and interests, we didn't interview them or we didn't hire them. And I think that's a really good point, that like your number of publications isn't really what gets you necessarily in the door. I mean, I think showing that you've engaged with research is good, but most faculty are looking at where and what kind of papers you're writing and what you're looking at and that kind of thing for academic positions. And I also totally agree with the other points. Just about applying for everything. I did the same thing. So I also feel like people think, oh, well, I'm in my last year, I have to go on the market. You can. I mean, it's great, but you don't have to. The only thing I'd add is just to, not a misconception, but like it's really easy as an early career researcher to look at another early career researcher and start doing social comparisons. Oh, this person is like teaching all their courses and they just published a paper and my course is a mess. I don't know how I'm going to prep this and I don't have any time to do this and I have to balance with my kids. And I would just caution against this because everybody really during an early career time, it's a time of transition. It takes a long time to get yourself comfortable. And if you're switching in and out of positions, it takes at least a semester to even know what's going on. And then another little bit to really feel like you're flourishing. And I think people are in such different places. They have such different competing demands on their time and on their research. And just to be wary of comparing yourself to others because everybody, no matter where they are, has had that transition. And it's a challenge no matter what. It's just hard, a new place and new tasks. So giving yourself grace instead of thinking, well, I should be doing X, Y, and Z, like better is important.
That's really helpful. And I think maybe that will be a good transition actually to this next part about, rather than thinking about what all you should do, what are some valuable skills or experiences? So what, in thinking about encouraging people to follow what it is they want to do and recognize that there's not one narrow way to do it, what are some good experiences and skills that would prove particularly beneficial during that transition into whatever avenue they decide to go.
I think I mentioned this earlier, so I can start. I think mentorship skills are really important. I think the skills that helped me included like data analytic advanced skills that also, I think some others have said this, like that got me in my foot in the door for postdoc applications where a lot of, for postdocs, I think a lot of researchers want someone who can kind of come and hit the ground running, writing papers from existing data. And I think having the skills to do that doesn't have to be advanced quantitative methods. In fact, I was just looking for a part of a team looking for a postdoc with qualitative skills, or mixed methods, but just developing whatever methodological skills are interesting helped. But the more soft skills that I think were really useful for me, especially in the transition to faculty, has been time management. And I really had to learn that better as a faculty member, but it evolves over time. I've always been an organized planner, but I think having kids made me take it to the next level, like kids and junior faculty combo, really being very intentional about what I say yes and no to, and like managing my time kind of go together hand in hand. It's an evolving skill, like, but I do think that's what I think I brought, a really important skill I had to bring in addition to the more hard skills.
Yeah, I think Emily made a very good point. I'll try to add something different. As a tenure track faculty member, one thing that is being expected to do in the first year is to teach. And like I said earlier, sometimes these courses are brand new. And if we do not know how to build a syllabus from scratch, this can be a huge struggle. When that was how I felt when I first came to OSU. But I went to a couple of professional development workshops, learning how to build a strong syllabus. OSU does offer this type of resources, and I think similar resources are available in other institutions, or sometimes some private institutions would offer this online. So I would say learning how to build a syllabus for graduates at a graduate level or undergraduate level can be really helpful. Because if you are, especially if you have a passion to teach and you want to be in a more teaching-oriented university.
I think we got a question, but can I just go ahead without answering the question?
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
good to have those questions there. So, the question that we were talking about first was the valuable skills and experiences. So maybe touch that one first, and then we can do this other one.
Okay. Since I'm still at postdoc position, so my answers will be more focused on postdoc position level. So as a postdoc, it's more than important as I said, independent research skills. That includes self-regulated skills and time management. Although I mentioned I don't mind working late night and working over the weekend, but that doesn't mean I just work hard to damage my health or sacrifice my family time. I just try to do my best to support my child and try to take care of myself. But that doesn't mean I set up a time from 9 to 5 for work hours. I just try to use my time flexibly to take care of everything. like just try to my best to take care of everything, but in flexible way. So to me, that's the most important skill.
I can answer the teaching question if that would be helpful, because that was my experience as well. So I was funded from the like NSF, GRFP. I was supposed to teach in my grad school. I had made a syllabus. I was ready to teach. And then right before I found out I was getting this fellowship and I didn't teach for the remainder of my graduate studies, which at the time was like great research time. And then I was a postdoc on the job market. And I had never taught. And the semester before I went on the market, I realized, this is a real gap in my CV. So I have two ways you can address this. One is you can try to find teaching. You can find a postdoc where teaching is an option. So like one of the postdocs I've hired for, they say, if you want, you could teach a class, and that happens. It's not necessarily that common if you're funded on someone else's grant, because then they want you to work on their grant more or less. If you write, like I did a grant for my own postdoc funding, and I just asked my mentor, can I teach a class? And she said yes, but I was doing it remote, so there was nowhere to teach. So I cold emailed department heads around the area where I was living in Boston. I networked with some of my faculty mentors who lived in the area and said, can you put in a word for me? And it worked. Somebody asked if I had an opportunity. And at the same time, an adjunct opportunity just came up through email, but someone forwarded it to me because they had heard I was looking. And I taught a class during the second year of my postdoc. Now, I was teaching my first class and on the job market and doing my postdoc all at once. So it was really busy. It wasn't like my best balanced semester, but in some ways it was nice in that I could postpone doing that independent teaching till I was ready. And it was a separate position as adjunct faculty. So I got to see a new institution, learn a little bit about it. That was one option. The other thing, and something I do with my students, if they don't have teaching opportunities, is to do set something up with your mentor to either see if you can teach a class or maybe do like a teaching internship or practicum where you, so my doctoral student took like a 1-credit class with me, sat in on my class, and then we created like not a formal syllabus, but a mini structure of like, we're going to have 3 conversations and you're going to help me look at these and do some practice grading. And we'll talk about grading. And then we'll have a conversation about like inclusion and DEI and a conversation about engaging lessons. And, we just set that up independently, and it gave, and the student did some guest lecture with feedback and got evaluations from the students in the class. So this wasn't formal teaching, but did give them hands-on experience and kind of a way to do that without it taking too much time. And I did something like that as a student too. I sat in on my advisor's class, did some guest lectures, and would that have been enough for me? I don't know at the time because I ended up teaching a class, but those are 2 pathways around it. Just maybe try to pick up a class, but you could also ask your advisor if you're worried and kind of get mentorship around that from them.
I think that's a really great segue into, and if anybody has any additional information or insight on that, but our final question, just as we're kind of wrapping up, is what are some ways that grad students can seek out support or advocate for that type of support? So asking to teach classes if they feel like they're not quite ready, or if they're coming up to a position where they have not gotten that experience. So any other thoughts about the teaching question, but then just in general, how can grad students seek out and advocate for that support?
I think having a sincere and honest conversation with your advisor or your mentor is really important. I didn't do a postdoc, but I have heard that different postdocs advisors have various expectations. Some advisors may be open to having their postdoc teach a course, and some advisors may be more concerned about that. And having a sincere conversation at least can open up some opportunities, even if courses cannot be taught within the department. Maybe there's a one-day workshop, or if you happen to have projects that involve collaborating with teachers, doing a teacher professional development, that some people would also see that as a teaching opportunity. You're teaching basically pre-service teachers or in-service teachers to implement something that's evidence-based. In our department, we have students teaching the same course in different sessions. And I have seen, this is all student initiated, which I think is wonderful. Sometimes they would invite each other as guest lecturer to their courses. In that way, they share some responsibilities and also support each other, making sure that additional things can be addressed on their CV. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of agree with what's been said, and I think if you feel like your mentor or advisor is not providing what you need or won't be amenable, like let's say I want to go into a non-academic position, but I don't think my mentor will be open to that. You want to hope most mentors in our field will be and will be supportive no matter what skills you want to develop. But I think it's also okay. You know, most of us have taken classes and developed relationships with more than one faculty member. And I think it's also okay to seek out advice from other people if you're not necessarily sure you're getting, if you're feeling like you're not feeling fulfilled with the advice you have. And I think, you know, just running questions by other people, especially if they have relevant expertise, is fine and good. I mean, it's good to have multiple mentors because people have different strengths.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that. Elise put a note in the chat about addressing seeking out advice from other people. I think you guys have all touched on you know, advocating for yourself, setting up boundaries, and understanding how to navigate the balance of work and life, and pursuing what you're really interested in, and not having to, you know, fit into a particular mold. And so I really appreciate all of those comments. So I'm going to share my screen as we transition and wrap up. So a couple of future events that we have at AERA. There's a social on Friday. We have some different conversations coming up, and we'll be receiving more emails from Shay as we continue. The next Motivation Monday will be on crafting compelling conference proposals. So paths to presentation success, and that's going to be on May 20th. And then writing groups have some new times. So there's a Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. And then Friday mornings from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So just some notes there. Thank you so much to our panelists. I, as a grad student, learned quite a bit and really appreciate the advice and the encouragement that you all provided. And we would love, if you don't mind, if you can put your emails in the chat, that would be wonderful. If anybody wants to reach out in the future, if that's okay that they do, that would be awesome. And if there's any final comments or thoughts, feel free to add those in the chat. I'll start sharing this now.
Yeah, thank you for facilitating, Bailey.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this is my first hosting, so it was really fun to do, and to talk with you all leading up to this, and then yeah, get to ask questions, and this was great. Thank you so much.